Hi everybody, good to see you again. Hope everyone had a good week. It's gorgeous outside. Hope everyone's getting some sunshine, getting some fresh air. And I'm very excited that we've got some new students that have joined our group. Welcome. Today we will be going through a few chapters, actually 4 chapters. It's actually going to be quite theory-dense session. So we're going to get through our chapters, our 4 chapters, tip, acrylic, skin disorders, and nail disorders. And then after that, we will go into our acrylic on tip demo. Okay? So I know everybody had their kits dropped off. That's awesome. Make sure you have your kits close. So when we start, I'll probably give you 5 minutes to grab your supplies and set up. And then you guys are going to watch my demo, and then you guys are going to practice. Okay, we'll do a few demos together, we'll do a few nails together, and then you guys can ask me questions, and we can troubleshoot together, and then any other questions you may have we'll address tomorrow during the Zoom. Okay, so if you have your manuals with you, I want you to turn to your tip chapter, nail tips. Okay? If you don't have it in paper version, you've got it digitally, it was emailed to you. Make sure for the new students, make sure that your emails are working correctly. I know Anna's probably set you up with that. Make sure you download your manual somewhere where you can easily access it. It's nice to have it on your phone and your computer or tablet. Normally we read through the chapters together, and I'll tell you about any specific information you need to highlight for quizzes, tests, or questions. You can mental note, or if you have a paper version or a PDF, you can actually highlight the information. So let's begin. Nail tips. Okay, so an artificial nail tip can be made of plastic, nylon, acetate, and acetate, so you'll need to know that, and are adhered using a nail glue to the natural nail to add strength. So the tips we're using today during the demo are those plastic tips, and we're going to actually be practicing on those. Those are the original tips that you would normally glue on to your client's nail before you apply the product. In lieu of just a form, the tip is the other option. So you can either use tips to give the nail length, or you can use a form to enhance the length of the nail. We're going to start learning about the tips, and then we'll go into the forms in the next couple of weeks. Tips are not strong enough to be applied simply on their own. They must have an overlay of some sort, or they will not last very long. Nail tips come in many different sizes and colors. You will decide which is right for you. The different sizes are available, so there is an accurate fit for each natural nail. So you basically have sizes 0 to 10 for your 5 sizes. So 9 times out of 10, there's no problem fitting the size specifically to your client's nail shape. You must set up your table with your usual manicure supplies as well as the following. So you need a coarse abrasive file, nail file, used to shape the artificial nail and buff the surface to remove shine and allow for the product to stick. So buffing or etching the nail surface is extremely important before you start applying the chemicals and the product. Block buffer is also used to buff the nail. It's in the shape of a rectangular block. You'll need nail glue, which is also known as adhesive. And this is used to attach the artificial nail tip to the natural nail. And you guys have all of these products in your nail kit. So maybe as I'm reading through the different products and supplies, you can kind of be looking in your nail kit and make sure that you're pulling everything you need to do for the demo and practice later. With the nail glue, you can use it with a brush The long extended tip is more difficult to control, so the brush tip applicator is the best, I find. And use the glue adhesive with caution. It can be harmful if you stick your fingers together or you stick your finger to your client's finger. It's really hard to get off. You can only dissolve that with acetone. So make sure you don't get it in your eye. If it falls or flicks, don't push too hard. If you're thinking it's not coming out and it squirts out into your client's or onto your client's face, just be really careful when you're handling glue. If you do get it in your eye, you need to run your eyes under warm water for a few minutes, and then you need to go to emergency. You can also wear safety goggles. If you wear glasses, wear your glasses. I don't recommend wearing contacts when you're working with chemicals. Chemicals give off fumes, just like a bleach gives off fumes. And it can actually melt the plastic, your contact in your eye, and fuse it to your eye and cause severe damage. So if you're working with these monomers and acetones, please wear your glasses, not your contact lenses. Okay? The construction of a nail tip has two main parts. Highlight this, it has the well and the position stop. Some have full wells and some have half wells. The well is the area that contacts the natural nail. The position stop is where the nail plate meets the tip before it is glued. Make sure that your nail tip never covers more than half of the nail. So the well you can see in this little picture here, there's a light shadow, is where it stops at the free edge. So you're not going to put it on more than 50% of the nail plate. You're going to stop it at the well and then rock it on, okay? Application steps for tips. Make sure your area is properly sanitized and clean. Complete all your pre-service steps and make sure your manicure table is properly set up. Wash your hands, wash your client's hands with antibacterial soap before you begin. So, number one, using non-acetone polish, remove with a cotton and polish remover. If they're wearing artificial nails, you may have to use your drill to remove. Use your cuticle spoon, number 2, and gently push back the cuticles. Do not use oil or soak the nails. You want the nails to be rough and dry in order for the product to adhere properly. Okay, so you're just pushing back the cuticle off the nail plate enough that it's not going to get in the way of your acrylic application. Okay, if you have to nip a little bit, that's fine, but we're not actually nipping all of the cuticle off. We don't want to create an injury or opening, and we don't want to make the skin vulnerable, especially when we're using chemical. Pardon me. Especially when we're using chemicals. Sorry about that, that was probably loud. Was that okay, Amir? Okay, need a drink. Okay, so remove polish, push back cuticles. Number 3, use your buffer. So we're going to buff the nail. We're going to make sure that there's no shine on the nail. So you're not overly buffing. You're not trying to buff all of the ridges out or the grooves out. You're literally just buffing lightly just to remove shine. You don't want to over buff. Don't use a nail file that's too coarse. Make sure you're using a nice gentle buffer to do this. Number 4, size your tips. So before you start with all your product, you're going to have your tray of tips in front of you, and you're going to size each finger. Now, 9 times out of 10, the sizes on the left are going to match the sizes on the right, but not all the time. A lot of people have different size thumbs or different size pinkies, so just double check with the sizes that you picked for this hand and make sure that they are also correct for the other hand. If not, just pick the size that fits best. okay? And you're gonna have all 10 tips out perfectly and ready to go, okay? Number 5, dehydrate the nail. There's lots of different brands of dehydrator. Bond-Aid is a popular dehydrator. You can just use 99% alcohol, 70% alcohol as well. Acetone is a good dehydrator, but you want to make sure that you get all those oils off the nail plate before you start. Number 6, now you want to apply your tips with adhesive. So you're going to use your adhesive, you're going to put it just in the well of the tip. That well is that lightly shaded area on the edge. You'll see it. It dips in. And when you apply your tip, you push the well against the free edge and you roll it on. So we call that stop, rock, and hold. Okay? And you only have to hold for like 10 seconds, not even. It should adhere quite quickly. If you're having issues with it adhering, then there's other issues, other problems going on, and we can troubleshoot and address that as we go, and we'll probably get into that in the next couple of weeks as well. Number 8, you're going to trim your tip. So you do have a tip cutter for artificial nail tips specifically. So be careful not to use your tip cutter when you have product on your nail. I don't know why this happens, but there's always 2 or 3 people in the class that try to cut their actual artificial nail once all of the acrylic has been put on, and you're going to break your tip cutter. And we can't replace it because it's expensive and you need to use your equipment properly. So make sure you don't use your tip cutter to cut nails that have already had acrylic put on them. Okay, the tip cutter is just for the tip. It's not strong enough for an actual artificial nail. Okay. Once you've found your desired length, you can use a coarse file or a medium grit file, sand and shape, sand any rough edges. And don't spend too much time shaping because you're going to shape at the very end once you've applied all the product. So just a quick little shape, remove any rough edges and move on. You need to use your medium grit file to blend the well, the stress point we call it. So where the well has adhered to the free edge, that's the stress point. That's the weakest part of the nail. So that needs to be the highest part of the nail. So we call that the C curve or the apex. It needs to be the highest, so it's the strongest. So right where that tip joins the natural nail, we need to blend it. You don't have to blend it all the way if you're using a colored a powder, if you're using whites and pinks, or beiges or greens or blues. But if you're using a clear and you're gonna be able to see through the entire nail, then you wanna have that tip completely blended. And I'll show you when we get to that part. And once you've done that, you also need to remove all the shine off the nail tip. So, and gently. If you overfile or overbuff that nail tip that you've just glued onto the nail, it'll become really weak and you might get holes in it and then the product won't adhere properly. So just light buffing, again, just to remove the shine. Now you can proceed with the service and apply either acrylic or gel or a wrap to your tip. There is a method of tip application called well cutting, which will help you achieve perfect smile lines. If you're finding that the well is really thick, you can actually cut the well in half. I like to have a smaller, shorter well myself. I don't like it when the well takes up too much of the surface area of the nail. But there's so many different tips you can buy. You can just buy them exactly how you want them. If you want to cut your tip, you can just cut, or if you want to cut into the well, use scissors, or again, you can use your tip cutters, okay? Now go down to the method of tip application using acrylic instead of glue. So there are some people that their nails just don't accept the glue. The glue just does not adhere to their nail, or even it might just be one stubborn nail. It's just the one nail every time. The nail just does not want to stick on. So if that's the case, that's fine. It might be an oily nail plate or a really thin nail plate. You can still adhere the tip with acrylic, a glossy bead of acrylic. So you would, instead of using glue, put a glossy bead of acrylic on your tip, and you would apply it the exact same way. And that's usually the way you'll do it. That usually works if glue doesn't, okay? And then you do everything the same after that. So you're basically just using acrylic like glue. Maintaining tips. Your client should come in every week or two for a glue fill. So if your client is just wearing tips or just wearing tips with fabric wrap on top, they can come in every week or two and they can have a glue fill. That's not very common. Honestly, most people now, they either do gel or they do acrylic. But if you need to, for short-term use, you can do a glue fill. To remove nail tips, all you need to do is get some cotton balls soaked in acetone, place them on, wrap with tin foil, just like you would the same removal for gel polish. Wait 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, and then that will completely dissolve the glue, and you unwrap it, and the tip will come off. You can use a medium grit file to file off any residue. You can use a buffer to smooth out the nail, and it's done. Honestly, it's really quick if it's just the glue and a tip. Okay, so that is the tip chapter. You guys will have questions. Make sure and check. Make sure that your questions are in your folders that Anna created for you. And then basically your tip questions. And if the tip questions aren't at the back of your chapter, if they're not in your folder, I'll make sure Anna sends those to you today. Your tip questions are exactly the same questions as your tip quiz, okay? I'm just going to go through it with you again, just for a quick review, so you know the specific information that you need to know. So a rough surface that is used to shape or smooth the nail and remove shine. So a rough surface that is used to shape or smooth the nail is a nail file or a buffer, okay? So if you want to call, what do we call a nail file and a buffer? We call them abrasives, okay? So a rough surface is an abrasive. That's the general term. Glue or bonding agent used to secure the nail tip to the natural nail. So another name for glue is adhesive. What does your client have to do before you start tip application? They have to wash their hands. Why do we apply a bead of adhesive to the seam between the natural nail plate and the tip? For added strength. For added strength, you can apply tips to the natural nail plate with, instead of adhesive, we can use acrylic. And tips can cause damage to the nail plate if removed improperly. Please describe the proper removal process. So that's when you apply an acetone-soaked cotton ball, wrap in tin foil, wait 10 to 20 minutes, remove, file, and buff. And then you can condition with cuticle oil after. What is the process used to apply tips to the natural nail plate? Stop, rock, and hold. What angle is the nail file held on when blending a tip? 45-degree angle. Why do you need to blend the tip before product application? So the nail looks transparent and seamless. And why does all the shine need to be buffed off the tip before product application? So the product can adhere to the nail tip. That's it. So that's all you need to know for your nail tip questions and quiz. Okay, let's go into our acrylic chapter now. Okay, so we're going to start on the acrylic chapter. You guys can follow along. Acrylic nails, also known as sculptured nails or enhancements, are created using an acrylic powder and acrylic liquid. So highlight that. Acrylic nails are known as sculptured nails or enhancements. They can be applied onto a natural nail, over a tip, or sculpted onto a form. A natural hair bristle brush is highly recommended for best results. A natural hair brush holds the right amount of monomer liquid that is then dipped into the acrylic powder to create a glossy acrylic ball. Acrylic chemistry is manufactured from ethyl methacrylate monomer liquid. Ethyl methacrylate monomer liquid. You'll need to know that for your questions and quiz too. Ethyl methacrylate monomer plus added ingredients are mixed together and then put into a reactor similar to a pressure cooker. During this transformation, the liquid monomer changes into a powdery substance called a polymer. A catalyst is added, coating each polymer bead. Acrylic liquid starts out as an ethyl methacrylate monomer with some additives to ensure color stabilization, strength, and flexibility. The polymers are then blended together with pigments to change clear to pink or white to natural. The latest colored polymers are for artistry and full nail color like reds, blues, purples, greens. Pretty much every color is available now. When the liquid from the brush picks up the powder from the jar, a reaction begins. You need to know this. The catalyst explodes, causing heat, starting a chain reaction. So heat transfer from one polymer bead to the next until the last bead receives heat. This is called polymerization or the curing process. Okay? A heat transfer from one polymer bead to the next until the last polymer bead receives heat. Acrylic nails over forms. We're going to get into acrylic nails over forms when we actually do forms, so we're going to just skip this portion. I want to just focus on acrylic on tips for today. So let's skip that. Application. Acrylic application over forms. Skip that. Okay, so skip down to acrylic nails over tips and natural nails, okay? So it says, complete number 1 to 5 in acrylic application on forms and proceed to the next step. So 1 to 5. So that is wash client's hands in hot soapy water, remove old polish with non-acetone or acetone, push back cuticles, lightly buff to remove shine, and dehydrate the nail. Okay? Now number 2, select the proper size of tips. Trim the nail to the desired length, blend into the natural nail plate, apply primer, and then continue with the application of product. Okay, so the application for application on tips and application on forms is exactly the same. You're just using a different base. Acrylic nail post-service. Schedule another appointment with your client for maintaining her nails. You'll need to know this, highlight, that a fill will be necessary in 2 to 3 weeks. So the fill is where it grows out from the cuticle line. The fill grows out from the cuticle line, and they need to come in and have that filled after 2 to 3 weeks. A backfill is when they need a fill again after 4 to 6 weeks, but they also have to fill the free edge, so the smile line. So if this smile line grows out, you're gonna see, it's gonna look yellow against my white free edge if I have a tip, a French tip. So you need to drill in, or drill down, I should say, and reposition my smile line with fresh white or whatever color my free edge is, okay? So a fill after 2 to 3 weeks. Sell products. Always make sure that you help your client maintain her professional service with home care products. Clean your table, dispose of any items that cannot be sanitized. Clean your brush and monomer or brush cleaner. Now, because your brush is made from natural hair, usually sable hair, which comes from a horse tail, you don't want to use harsh chemicals. So don't try to clean your brush in acetone. Don't try to clean your brush in alcohol. Only use either monomer liquid, the monomer that you use to sculpt your nail, or a specific brush cleaner for your brush, okay? Once you've wrecked your brush, it's really hard to retame the bristles back to their original shape, so be very careful with your brush. They're very delicate, they fray very easy. Once it's frayed, or once you get hard acrylic stuck in your brush, you can't ever get it out once it's polymerized in your bristles, and you have to go and buy another brush. And you don't want to do that because those brushes are $20 to $25, sometimes more. And we don't have money like that right now. So again, just be very careful with your brush. When I do my demo later, I'm going to be very clear about exactly how to take care of your brush and how to clean your brush in between applications, okay? And always store acrylic products in a dry, cool, dark place, and make sure your containers are always sealed. Acrylic backfill using an electric drill. So again, the backfill is once you've already done your first fill, 4 to 6 weeks later, you're going to do your backfill and another fill, and you're going to reposition the white free edge. So you file the entire nail, you blend out the growth part at the cuticle, and then you drill into the free edge, and then you apply your new acrylic in the free edge. And again, you don't have to fully understand that right now. We're going to be doing demos of all of this, and we're going to be actually working together on our tips and our fake fingers. So when we do that, we'll be going through step for step. So let's skip down to an acrylic backfill without an electric drill. If you're not using an electric drill, you're just using a regular file, and you're literally just filing in your groove instead of using the drill, okay? Acrylic nails over bitten nails. Now, a lot of your clients are going to want artificial nails or nail extensions because they bite their nails. So if you're trying to fit a tip onto somebody that has an overly bitten nail, it's going to be really hard because they don't have very much nail to work with. They don't have that much surface area. So what you can do is create a false free edge over top of the nail that they do have and right over top of the skin. So usually when people have overly bitten nails, they've got that puffy part of skin coming up. So the nail is here and then the skin comes up. So what you need to do is apply the acrylic, a thin layer of acrylic, to that piece of nail, and then pull it forward over top of the skin right to the end. Let it cure, and then pull the skin back, pull the skin down, and create that false free edge. File it, shape it, buff it, and now you've got a free edge to work with. Now normally you want to do that when you're using forms. You want as much surface area as possible to work with when you've got overly bitten nails. Rarely will you try to fit or glue a tip onto that little bit of nail. It's not enough surface area, okay? Acrylic tips. Acrylic over natural nails, it's exactly the same. Acrylic post-service, we've already gone through that, so skip down. And skip down to acrylic nail maintenance and removal. Regular maintenance helps prevent acrylic nails from lifting or cracking. When acrylic nails lift, crack, or grow out with no maintenance, moisture and dirt can become trapped under the acrylic nail and fungus can begin to grow. Fungal infections or bacterial infections are quite common with people that don't maintain their nails. If this is the case, you have to take the nails off for your client and you have to tell them not to put nails on and to see a doctor. If your client comes in and they want a fill or a backfill and they have a full-on fungal infection and they want you to take them off and put a new set on, you have to say no. You have to. And I know a lot of nail techs out there don't. A lot of nail techs are required from their employer to work on anybody, any condition, any fungal infection and bacterial infection, and that's just not the proper way of doing things. You want to uphold the highest level of disinfection and sanitation, and you want to create a safe environment for your client, and you want to educate your client on healing themselves and keeping themselves healthy, and if you have to, refer them to a doctor. And you know what, 9 times out of 10, most clients will be grateful that you actually care about their health and well-being. So don't ever feel bad for denying your client a service if they have a skin disorder. And we'll be going into skin disorders and nail disorders next, so you guys will learn all about those. Acrylic nail maintenance. So again, fills every 2 to 3 weeks, backfills every 4 to 6 weeks. And you need to know that the 3 things you need to do to maintain nails is a fill, a backfill, and rebalancing. So rebalancing means filing down with a rough grit file or using a drill and filing the nail down no more than halfway. Rebalancing and filing down the cuticle line and the free edge, and then applying fresh new product, okay? So rebalancing is extremely important with both fills and backfills. Okay, so we went through fills. Crack repair for acrylic nails. Crack repair isn't that common. Once you've done a crack repair, the nail's not as strong, so you're better off just taking the whole nail off and starting over. If you do find that your client has a crack in the nail, don't just cover it with a new coat of acrylic. That's not going to hold. It won't stay strong. You actually have to drill a well into the nail, into the crack, and then refill that with fresh product, okay? Acrylic removal. You need to fill a glass or ceramic bowl with acetone, just enough to cover the client's fingers, and you soak the fingers for 15 to 20 minutes, and then you can push the soft, this is going to soften and emulsify the acrylic. You're going to push off with an orange wood stick, or you can use a rough grit file and roll it off like jelly. And if you find that it hasn't all come off, then soak again for another 10 to 15 minutes, and then the rest should soften and roll off really nice. Okay? Buff any remaining acrylic residue off the nail plate and condition with oil or hand lotion. Now, it's not very common for spas and salons to work with acrylic. Most salons prefer to work with gel because there's no odor. But if certain salons do work with acrylic, they sometimes like to use odorless acrylic. Odorless acrylic is a little different than traditional acrylic, and you need to know the differences. It's a little harder to work with only because it takes a lot longer to dry. So the polymerization time is a lot slower. So it's almost like a gel, where if you don't cure it right away, it starts to fall down the sidewalls a little bit. So if you like to build your claws and you love acrylic, you'll find when you use odorless acrylic, it's not as fun. But sometimes if you're working from home or you're in an environment that needs a low odor, that's probably one of your only options. So it's completely different from traditional acrylic because the chemicals do not evaporate. So if there's no vapors, there's no smell. The liquid monomer is much denser than traditional acrylics and will pick up 4 times more the amount of powder. So that's one difference. Well, that's the second difference actually. So 1, it does not evaporate. 2, it picks up 4 times the amount of powder, so you need a lot less powder. A patting brush technique moves the product onto the nail surface. As the inner layers become hard, the unused portion of the monomer rises to the top surface, forming a tacky layer. So that's the next point, is that it forms a tacky layer just like gel does. So you have to remove that tacky layer with cotton or a lintless wipe. It allows for more time for shaping. It's self-leveling, just like gel, but the drying time is 3 to 5 minutes, which is a long time, especially if there's no other way to cure it. And they're not compatible with any other acrylics. Light-cured acrylics, similar to odorless acrylics, plus photo initiators. Light-cured acrylics harden when exposed to UV light. Light-cured acrylics do not evaporate, so they are odorless as well. Colored acrylics are manufactured clear, and you can pretty much get any color you want. Usually with colored acrylics, they're great for nail art, 3D nail art. You guys will be learning all of that. If you want to do red tips or green tips for a special occasion, you can do that with colored acrylic as well, instead of using gel polish to paint it on. There's another method called the sprinkle-on powder. So sprinkle-on powder is kind of like the same concept as solar nails. Certain acrylic products utilize a brush-on liquid. So it's like a brush-on glue, brush-on adhesive, and there's a tub of powder, and you can either dip the nail into the powder or you can sprinkle it on, and the powder completely absorbs into the gel layer and creates a nail. It's really easy to do. There's really no technique to it. There's no sculpting or building. The nails look really natural. It's really quick to do. So this is an option that you can give your clients. And then acrylic application over forms. We're going to go over the acrylic application over forms when we actually get to that section. Again, it's exactly like tips, except the base is different. So acrylic application over tips, that's what we're going to do today. So once we've done all our prep and you've glued the nail onto your client's free edge, and you've blended and you've buffed, then you start applying the acrylic. So when you get really good and you get really fast, you can apply and sculpt the nail with one ball, one bead of acrylic. When you're learning, we need to learn how to build up the stress point. So if you're using one bead of acrylic from the cuticle down, it's just going to be flat, or it's going to be like a duck beak, a ski jump. We don't want the nail flat. We want the nail to have a C curve. So thin around the cuticle and sidewalls, thin at the free edge, but has an apex. So in order to get that high point in the midpoint of the nail, you need to apply your first ball of acrylic at the free edge, then at the stress point, the midpoint, then the cuticle. So every ball, the second ball and the third ball that's getting pulled over is creating that apex, okay? So we're gonna learn in 3 balls: free edge, midpoint, cuticle. And then when you start getting quicker, you can do it in 2 balls. And then maybe a smaller nail, you can do it in 1 ball when you get more confident, okay? What was that loud?
Yeah.
Sorry. I keep forgetting I have this mic on. Sorry. I have a tickle in my throat. Okay, so that's it for acrylics. I want you guys to work on your questions. You have your questions in the back of your chapter. We are going to be going over all of our questions, question answers if you need to tomorrow during the Zoom. Anna, I think, has sent you the link. If not, she'll be sending that tomorrow morning or by end of day today. We're not going to do the spa and nails together. We're going to separate it just so I can focus more on you guys with nails, and I can focus more on spa with the spa girls. So we will have more time to go over exactly what you need to know for your quizzes, okay? Okay, 2 chapters down, 2 more to go. Big theory day. Let's get into our skin disorder chapter now, okay? Skin disorders. And then I'll have time when we're done the chapters for question answers. Okay, let's get started. Skin disorders and diseases. So it's really important that you guys have an understanding of skin disorders and diseases and nail disorders and diseases. Again, you don't want to work on contagious areas. You don't want to cause injury, making the client susceptible to these diseases. And you want to be able to identify a possible disease or disorder in order to refer your client to a doctor in order for you to safely perform your nail service, okay? So as a nail technician, you need to learn about skin disorders so you know when it's safe to work on your client. Your goal as a professional is to prevent the spread of disease and avoid worsening a condition your client already has. Healthy skin, highlight this, is moist, soft, acidic, and flexible. Remember, make an informed decision about servicing your client, but never diagnose a condition. Only a medical doctor is qualified to do that. So don't tell your client that they definitely have a toenail fungus and they need to see a doctor. Say, this looks like it could be a toenail fungus. How long have you had it? What color did it start off looking like? It's dark brown now. Has it always been that color? Ask some questions and then just refer them to a doctor. Say the next time you go to your doctor, you should get that looked at. You need to know that a dermatologist studies the branch of medical science that studies and treats the skin called dermatology. There are 2 types of symptoms of disease. There's objective symptoms and subjective symptoms. So objective symptoms are visible to the esthetician, such as inflammation, pimples, rashes, redness, pustules. And subjective symptoms are felt by the client, such as itching, burning, and pain. Lesions are structural changes in the tissue caused by injury or disease. So we're going to go through all of the primary lesions and secondary lesions, okay? So a bulla, very common with the feet and the heel. A large blister containing watery fluid, larger than a vesicle. So always make sure before you start using your foot paddle to remove callus that you're inspecting around the edges of the heel and you're looking for bullas or blisters from wearing tight shoes, wearing high heels, wearing running shoes, ski boots. Really common with athletes to have blisters on their feet. A cyst is a semi-solid lump containing fluid. A macule is a flat discolored patch on the skin, such as a freckle. A papule, also known as a pimple. a small elevation of skin that may develop pus, a pustule, an inflamed infected papule containing pus, a tubercle is an abnormal rounded solid lump, a tumor, an abnormal cell mass that varies in size, shape, and color, and you need to know that nodules are small tumors. Vesicles are small blisters containing clear fluid, normally caused by poison ivy. A wheal or a hive are swollen, itchy bumps on the skin that may last several hours, usually caused by insect bites or allergic reactions. A crust or a scab is an accumulation of dead cells, sebum, and pus formed over a wound or blemish while it is healing. A fissure is a crack in the skin that penetrates the dermis, like chapped lips or cracks in the heels. A keloid is a hypertrophic thick scar resulting from excessive growth of fibrous tissue. A scale is flaky skin like dandruff or dry skin. An ulcer is an open lesion on the skin accompanied by pus and loss of depth. A scar is a light-colored, flat or slightly raised mark on the skin that forms after an injury or lesion has healed. And a stain is an abnormal discoloration that remains after moles, freckles, or liver spots have disappeared. Skin disorders. While only a medical doctor is qualified to make a diagnosis, you should learn to recognize the symptoms that indicate a disorder is present. The golden rule of skincare and skin disorders is that if the area of the skin to be worked on is inflamed, infected, broken, or raised, a nail technician should not service the client. Inflamed skin is red, swollen, so inflammation is swollen and sore. Infected skin always has evidence of pus. So if there's an infection, there's always pus. And broken skin is when the epidermis is torn, exposing the deeper layers. Raised skin can be a lesion or a symptom of a lesion. So raised skin is always inflammation. So dermatitis is a general term for a skin disorder. Inflammation of the skin, including lesions, eczema, or papules. So contact dermatitis is contact with a chemical or substance. Contact dermatitis is very common with nail technicians. Eczema is a chronic inflammatory disorder. Eczema can be found on the cuticles or in between the fingers. And then there's itching, burning, and the formation of scales and oozing blisters. Psoriasis is red patches covered with white silver scales caused by skin cells that replicate too fast. Edema is swelling. Erythema is redness. Callus or tyloma is caused by friction. Friction blisters are a localized reaction to the skin from friction from an external source. Excoriation, a sore or abrasion caused by scratching off superficial layers of the skin. Contagious diseases or fungal infections of the skin. Herpes simplex. Herpes simplex or cold sores. Very contagious, reoccurring viral infection consisting of clusters of small vesicles on a red swollen base. Pink eye, you need to know, is another name for bacterial conjunctivitis. It is a contagious disease. Tinea is a fungal infection. Tinea corporis forms a ringed red pattern with elevated edges. And a verruca is a wart caused by the human papilloma virus. You have to be careful with verrucas or warts. Very common with people to get warts on their feet, between their toes, on their cuticles. Very common to get them incrustated around all the cuticles. Again, if your client has warts, you cannot work on the area. If it's a wart on the hand or a wart on the palm, that's fine. Just don't touch it, wear gloves, but you cannot be working on the area that the verrucas are on, okay? And it's surprising, a lot of people think that their verruca or their wart is just callus or really dry skin. And they're right, it is dry skin and it is calloused because warts do get calloused over time. And that's actually a protective barrier protecting the wart from spreading. As soon as you start, especially on the feet, if you start filing it and filing it down, thinking it's callous, trying to get rid of it, smoothing it out, you're opening up that root system and you're making it highly contagious. And then they'll spread really quickly. So you don't want to be touching those with your bare hands. Tinea pedis or ringworm. Pardon me. Also known as athlete's foot. Now we are just looking. That's all you really need to know for your quiz. There's a lot of information in this chapter that you don't need to know about right now. And we have a lot of information to cover, plus a demo, so I kind of want to get moving through. So I want you guys to read through the rest of the chapter on your own, do your questions, but the skin disorders quiz is only going to be based on a few different things that I'm going to go over. Now, I believe Anna put a study guide in your folder for skin disorders. If she hasn't, she will by the end of the day or first thing in the morning. And we can just focus on that information right now, okay? For your skin disorders quiz, you're going to have a word bank, and then you're going to have definitions. So you just match the term with the definitions, okay? So all the information is going to be there for you. It talks about keloids, fungal infections, fissures, vesicles, everything we've already just talked about. So it's pretty straightforward. And I'll make sure that that's in your folder, okay? Right now, though, I want to move on to nail disorders, okay? So nail structure and disorders. Okay. Again, you must know when it is safe to work on a client or when to refer them to a dermatologist. You need to know that a dermatologist is a skin specialist. And you need to know that a podiatrist is a foot specialist. The technical term for nail is onyx, and nails are part of the integumentary system and are made up of the same protein, keratin, as skin and hair. Nails are mirrors of the general health of the body. Systemic problems in the body can show up in the nails, such as nail disorders or poor nail growth. Healthy nails are smooth, shiny, and translucent pink or peach. And normal nails have several different functions, like enhancing the use of the fingers for handling small objects, scratching, or grooming purposes. Highlight that the normal nail grows 0.1 millimeters per day, or approximately 3 millimeters per month. And this is just generalizing. To completely replace a fingernail, it takes about 6 months, while to replace a toenail, it takes between 12 to 18 months. The growth rate varies with each individual. Men's nails generally grow faster than women's, and certain diseases such as psoriasis cause the growth rate to increase. So the growth rate increases with psoriasis because the cellular turnover is so quick with the skin cells that the same thing happens with the keratin for the nail. The growth rate just speeds up. Nail anatomy. The normal nail unit is composed of 6 basic parts. Yes, you need to know them for your test. The matrix bed, the nail plate, the cuticular system, the nail bed, specialized ligaments, and nail folds. And yes, you need to know that the cuticular system is made up of the cuticle, the eponychium, and the hyponychium. The eponychium is basically just the true cuticle, and the hyponychium is the cuticle under the free edge. Okay? Then you'll see you have a diagram of the nail. If Amir wants to bring up the other diagram I have, you guys will need to know how to label this diagram. And this is a diagram of the nail plate, the nail bed, the nail grooves, the hyponychium, the eponychium, the peronychium, and then the intermediate, proximal, and distal portions of the nail. So if you don't have those diagrams in your folders, we'll make sure we have those in your folders by tomorrow morning, okay? Okay, so number 1, the matrix bed is composed of matrix cells that produce the nail plate. It can be seen as a whitish moon-shaped area under the nail plate. So the matrix, some of us have that lanula, that moon-shaped spot at the base of the nail. Some of us don't. Some of my nails have it, but that is where the matrix bed is. So right underneath that skin is where nail growth begins. And if you injure that portion of the nail, then the nail can grow out distorted. Sometimes it corrects itself, sometimes not. The cuticular system. So the cuticular system, again, consists of the eponychium, which is at the cuticle, the true cuticle, and then the hyponychium under the free edge, and then peronychium is just referring to the entire cuticular area surrounding the entire nail. The nail bed lies under the nail plate. We know where that is. There is a thin piece of bed epithelium, so a very thin piece of tissue that is connected to the nail plate that helps the nail plate grow along the nail bed. So the nail plate is actually connected to a piece of tissue that grows underneath, and that connects to the bottom of the free edge, which we know to be the hyponychium. You need to know that that grayish band, like if you look, you sometimes can see it. I can't really see mine, but sometimes when you pull that skin back and you look under your free edge, you can see a gray band. You need to know that that's also known as the onychodermal band or sole horn. Okay. It assists in attaching the nail plate and underlying skin, preventing bacterial invasions. So you have to be really careful as a nail tech when you're pushing back, cutting, cleaning, especially when you're cleaning underneath the free edge of the nail with your cotton-tipped orangewood stick. You don't want to be too aggressive doing that, because if you puncture that or break that skin, then it's going to turn into a portal of entry for fungal or bacterial infections for your client, and it's painful. Same thing, sometimes clients hyponychium, which is this cuticle skin growing at the distal part of the nail. Sometimes that skin grows right onto the free edge and grows up. So looking down at the nail, it looks like there's a long free edge. You think you can cut it, but underneath the skin is attached. So sometimes you'll end up cutting the skin underneath. So with toenails especially, make sure you look underneath and make sure the skin is completely pulled away from the free edge before you cut it. Because if you cut into that tissue, it's very painful and it bleeds a lot. It's really hard to stop the bleeding. So you don't want to be in that situation. Number 5, we have specialized ligaments that anchor the nail and matrix bed to the underlying bone. You have nail folds. These nail folds surround the entire nail plate and form the nail grooves, as well as determine the shape of the nail. The nail plate originates at the matrix bed. So again, we have the proximal. Closest to the actual finger is the proximal. The mid part of the nail is intermediate, and the distal is basically the free edge. So distal, think about like the farthest distance from the hand is the distal portion. Went over that. Good. Moving along, move down onto chemical content of the nail. So there's lots of chemicals that make up the nail. We've got magnesium, sodium, potassium, iron, copper, zinc, sulfur, and nitrogen. Lots of chemicals. The lower the water content, the more brittle the nails become. The application of nail enamel or nail conditioner will reduce the loss of water from the nail. Nail disorders. A nail disorder is caused by, you need to know this, injury, disease, or imbalance in the body. Use the golden rule to make responsible decisions about the health of your client's nails. So the golden rule is that if the nail or skin to be worked on is infected, inflamed, swollen, broken, or red, a nail technician should not service that client. Instead, refer the client to a doctor. An inflammation is red and sore. So inflammation is raised skin, puffy skin, and an infection, you know, is evidence of pus. If there's no pus, there's no infection. Common nail disorders and their symptoms. Here are some examples of nail disorders that can usually be serviced by a nail technician. So you need to know the differences between disorders that can be serviced by a nail technician and disorders that cannot. So we're starting with disorders that can. So a bruised nail, quite common. This is when a clot of blood forms under the nail plate. Discolored nails, a condition in which the nail turns a variety of colors, including yellow, blue, green, red, or purple. This can be caused by poor blood circulation or heart conditions. Eggshell nails caused by improper diet, internal disease, or certain medications. This is when the nail becomes thin, white, and curved over the free edge. Furrows or corrugations. These are long ridges that run either lengthwise or across the nail and create ridges or grooves in the nail, caused by psoriasis, poor circulation, and frostbite. Hangnails, caused by dry cuticles or cuticles that have been cut too close to the nail in which the cuticle around the nail splits, quite common. Leukonychia, air bubbles, or a bruise caused from injury to the nail, in which white spots appear on the nail. Melanonychia, present in all dark skin races and extremely rare in Caucasians. Because of the dark pigment, it's a dark band of pigment that can grow from the proximal part of the nail to the distal part of the nail. And it just grows up in a dark band. Onychotrophia or atrophy, caused by an injury to the nail matrix or by internal disease. This is when the nail wastes away, loses its shine, shrinks, and falls off. Onychotrophia. Onychosis or hypertrophy, caused by internal imbalance, local infection, injury, or it can be hereditary. This is when the abnormal overgrowth of nails and thickening of the nail plate begins. Tile-shaped nails caused by an abnormal curvature of the matrix bed, in which there is an increased transverse curvature throughout the nail plate. Trumpet or pincer nail. More common on toes, caused by a bone spur on the top of the underlying bone or has been inherited. The edges of the nail plate curl inward, eventually forming the shape of a trumpet or cone. These nails are really hard to cut. Applicatured nail, caused by injury or inherited, in which the surface of the nail bed is flat while the edges of the plate are folded at a 90-degree angle. Often seen as ingrown nails. Onychocryptosis. The nail grows into the sides of the tissue around the nail, a result of the nail bed being folded or involuted deep into the soft tissue. Onychophagy. Nails that have been bitten so much that they become deformed. Onychophosis, a horny growth of epithelium in the nail plate, underneath, in between the nail plate and nail bed. Yeah. Onychophyma. That basically just means swelling of the nail. Onychorhexis, split or brittle nails that also have a series of lengthwise ridges. Onychogryphosis, also known as ram's horn, result of injury to the matrix bed. It could be hereditary. Usually older people have these types of nails. They're brownish, thick, hard to cut nail plates. Onychosis or onychopathy is the technical term given to nail disease. And pterygium is the forward growth of the cuticle abnormally adhering to the skin, abnormally adhering skin to the nail plate. So this is when our normal true cuticle starts to grow up with the nail plate. You want to push it back and you want to recondition, but if you push back too aggressively, you can cause trauma to the cuticle and it will start bleeding. So clients like that haven't had a manicure in a long time, but they have pterygium, you need to probably give them mini manicures once a week for probably 3 times to push back the cuticle a little bit at a time without causing trauma. Okay, so these are nail conditions that cannot be worked on. So everything we just went through, it's safe to work on as a nail tech. Nail conditions that you can't work on and you should refer your client to a doctor are the following. Mold or fungus. Really hard to grow mold on the nail plate, but not uncommon to have a fungal infection. So if the client tells you that it started off as a yellowish green color and it darkened to dark brown or black, it's probably a fungal infection. If it looks dark brown or black and they tell you it's always been that color and it's only been there for a couple of weeks, maybe they stubbed their toe, maybe it's just a bruise, we don't know for sure. Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Pseudomonas aeruginosa is a bacteria found in soil and water. So this is a common bacterial infection for gardeners to get when the soil gets trapped underneath the natural nail and the artificial nail. That's why it's always good if you're doing gardening, wear gloves, especially if you have artificial nail enhancements on. Onychia is inflammation of the entire nail unit. Onychomycosis is also known as tinea unguium, and this just means a disease caused by fungus. And you need to know that diseases caused by fungus are called vegetable parasites. And you need to know that less than 50, there's over 100,000 species of fungus, but less than 50 cause infection in humans. So not that much when you do the math. Fungus that affects the nail unit. So this is another type of fungus that's a little bit different. This one is seen as a whitish patch that can be scraped from the surface of the nail. So if you're filing into the nail or you're buffing into the nail plate and it starts to crumble a little bit, or little white bits start kind of flaking off, and it looks like the more you buff, the more the nail is going to come off, you don't want to do that. That is a fungal infection, and it's called Leukonychia mycotia. Okay, so you need to know that. Yellow, brown, orange, black or green color is the most common. The second most common is the whitish colored one. Onycholysis, a condition in which the nail loosens from the nail bed, usually beginning at the free edge, and continues to the lanula but does not come off. Then we have onychomatosis. This is shedding of the nail plate from the matrix bed that occurs when the matrix bed stops producing nail plate for 1 to 2 weeks. It is caused by a localized infection, minor injury to the matrix bed, systemic illnesses, common with people that have gone through chemotherapy. Onychoptosis, a condition in which part or the entire nail sheds periodically and falls off the finger. Paronychia. So we talked about the paronychium, the cuticle surrounding the entire nail unit. Paronychia is an infection of the tissue around the nail. Go down a little bit and it talks about chronic paronychia, and this is caused by a yeast infection. That's all you need to know. You need to know that chronic paronychia is caused by a yeast infection. And the last one, pyogenic granuloma. Severe inflammation of the nail in which a lump of red vascular tissue grows up from the nail bed onto the nail plate. Okay, so those are all the nail disorders. Yes, you need to know most of them. You don't need to know all of them for your test, but you guys have questions and you have a study sheet in your folder. Okay, you have your questions, nail disorder questions, 1 to 8, the back of your chapter. And you're also going to need to know how to label this. Okay? So we'll make sure we have all that information in your folders for you. Now, you guys can ask me questions before we start our demo.
Marie asked earlier, what are some examples of light-cured acrylics?
Examples of light-cured acrylics. Light-cured acrylics are exactly the same as regular acrylics. You have a monomer liquid and you have a powder. I guess it's like an odorless acrylic where it takes a slower time to cure. It's like a gel where if you don't cure it quick enough, it will fall into the sidewalls. But it's the same powder and liquid form. You just use a UV light to cure it. That's kind of the old way of doing things. That's kind of an old technique that we really don't practice anymore. You won't really see that type of acrylic in salons anymore. Skydip powder is exactly the same as solar nails, it's just a different name. So you have like a high velocity glue that you brush on first, and then you either dip the nail in the powder or you sprinkle it on. It's the same idea. It's just when you see these different names, it's just the different names of the manufacturer of the brand. Dipping powder and solar nails, yeah, that's not like a poly gel. Polygel is amazing and easy to work with if you guys haven't already. Polygel is like the perfect combination between a gel and an acrylic nail that it doesn't self-level too quickly, and it's firm enough that you can sculpt it. Cut the free edge all the way down and applying tips. Is that right? Why? No, you just cut when you apply your tip, you cut your free edge to the length your client wants. So if they want a longer free edge, don't cut the tip. If they want a shorter nail, then you cut it. You don't have to cut it. Any other questions, guys?
There's a question.
Before. Yeah, you want to, the question is if the client wants to cut cuticle, we do it before or after applying acrylic nails. If the client wants a full manicure, like they actually have a lot of maintenance, you want to get them in for that a couple days before the artificial enhancements. You don't want to be cutting all that cuticle off and exposing them to the chemical. Now, is it going to hurt them right away? Probably not. Is it going to make them sensitive to an allergic sensitizer? Is it going to maybe cause a contact dermatitis further down the road? Possibly. So you don't want to have open skin or broken skin or freshly nipped skin before applying chemicals to the nail plate. So yes, we want to push back a little bit, nip a little bit of the stray long pieces of skin, but don't actually cut into the cuticle. And if they want that, you just warn them and tell them it might cause sensitivities. And if they're okay with that, then that's fine. But ideally, when you start getting your regular clients in, you want to tell them to come for a full manicure the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week, they can get their full set of acrylics or gels. The homework, the questions are at the back of your chapter. So you have questions and worksheets or your workbook in your folder that Anna created for you. Yeah. What is the difference between a dry bead, a medium bead, and a wet bead? That's just the consistency of your acrylic. So normally when you're dealing with acrylic, you want a glossy wet bead. A medium bead is just a medium size bead. A dry bead is just less monomer. So if you want your acrylic bead to smooth over the nail nicer, you want it wetter, so you want to add more monomer. If you want more control over your acrylic bead, then you want to use less monomer. You want it to be firmer, then it's a drier bead. That wasn't in the chapter we read. So where are you getting this information so I can figure out exactly where your source is? I want to make sure that I'm answering it correctly for you. Okay guys, while we're doing question and answers, I'm going to start setting up for the demo. We've got 40 more minutes to do this. I want you guys to start getting your supplies. You need your acrylic brush, you need your powders, your monomer, you need your finger and tips, and a medium grit file, buffer, and that's about it really. Okay. So I know some of you are new, so I will set up right here so you guys can see my station, and I'll hold up my supplies and you guys can see exactly what you need to pull out, okay? Okay. Okay guys, get your supplies. You need your acrylic brush, now if you haven't used your acrylic brush before, the bristles are going to be very stiff. So what you need to do is get your monomer liquid and get a dapping dish. You guys have pink dapping dishes in your kit, so you can use one of these to use your monomer and your powder in. I'm going to use this one. And just use a little bit of monomer at a time. It's very easy to overuse, but a little goes a long way. So, monomer liquid. Now to soften your bristles, be very gentle. Remember I was talking about how delicate your bristles are? Just gently massage the bristles into the monomer liquid and soften them up. Don't push down this way because it'll fray your bristles and you won't be able to have a nice application. So just condition the bristles, soften it until they're nice and soft. Okay. If you have a stray little fray or a random little hair sticking out, leave it and just cut it. Don't pull it out. All these bristles have fit in perfectly, so if you pull one out, it's going to loosen the rest of the bristles and they'll eventually all start to fall out. Okay. You have a finger. I don't know if your finger is like this finger, but if it is, you can grab a larger size tip and just kind of squeeze the tip into the little grooves. And it should just fit in like this. Now while we're practicing, if you don't want to have it on the finger, you can just hold it and we can work like this as well. That's fine. Up to you. You have your buffer. You guys have bigger buffers, rough grip buffers, and you have softer grip buffers.
Talking to camera, talk to this one.
Oh, okay. Perfect. They look like this. You guys have files. I don't know if they're exactly like this, but just make sure you have a medium grit file.
If you're talking to the camera, talk to this one.
Okay.
But you can put it in that one.
I know. Well, I'm doing this for the first time, so bear with me. So make sure you're using your medium grit file. Duster brush. So this is used to remove all the powder off the surface of the nail. You want to make sure that all the powder is completely removed off the surface before you apply any top coats or gel top coats. Now I have some tin foil here. I want to start off making little acrylic beads. So we're going to be making some really glossy beads, and we're going to be making some firmer beads. And I want to just get used to dropping the little beads, working with the ratio of monomer liquid to polymer powder. I want you guys to pour a little bit of monomer into your dappen dish, and then I want you to pour a little bit of your polymer powder into your other dappen dish. Now, if you can, let's use white today. The white just shows up really clear on the surface. If we use clear, you can't really see your borders that well. So if you want to get some white acrylic powder, that would be awesome. Layer your workstation with a towel and paper towel. Be careful not to get the monomer liquid on any surfaces or tabletops, because it will completely destroy the paint or enamel, and your mothers or roommates will not be happy with you if that's the case. So if you don't have tin foil, just working on paper towel is fine too. So I'm going to go ahead and just start the application of monomer and polymer, and I'm going to create some nice glossy beads, and then we're going to place them down on either surface, and then we'll start the application on our nail tip. Okay? You want to have an extra paper towel as well to wipe the monomer liquid off your brush. So when I'm working here, in between every application, I dip my brush into my monomer liquid, wipe, make sure that the polymer powder is kind of flat. Let's flatten it out. Don't put your whole brush in. You don't need that much product. We're only putting the tip of the brush in and pulling towards yourself. So dip it in, pull, lift. You have a perfect little bead there. Place it down on your surface. Even if you have a piece of paper, you can do this. Now, I want you to see, it's like a little mint or a little Mentos. Okay, now, I'm not going to go back in my monomer and back in my polymer. You can never, ever, ever double dip. Okay? I'm going to take my paper towel, clean my brush. You guys can see. Make sure there's no monomer or polymer, and then move on. Okay? Flatten your polymer powder so you have a flat surface, and then just the tip in, pull, up. You have a nice bead. Place it down. Pat it a little bit if there's any dry areas and leave it, okay? So this is really important that you can master this. The beads need to look glossy. I don't want the beads pancaking and flattening completely because that means they're too wet. If there's little crusty areas and it doesn't look smooth, then that means there's not enough monomer liquid. So you need to find the perfect ratio between monomer liquid and polymer powder. So I want you guys to do 10 of these, 10 little beads, okay? And then eventually, with those little beads, we are going to be creating a nail that looks like this. So our first bead will go at the free edge. Our second bead is going to go on the stress point, and we'll drag it over. And then we're going to have our last bead, our cuticle bead, right here at the top, and we're going to pull it down. Now, if you want to draw where your cuticle line is, you can draw with a pen so you know where to stop. Don't try to put product over the entire tip. You're very rarely going to have somebody that's going to have the entire length of the tip completely covered in product. When you learn how to do claws and you start learning how to build up and structure the nail, then you can start using more product. But right now, we're just going to be focusing on doing natural looking nails. So I only want you to don't go past halfway, okay? First bead, second bead, third bead, and your nail should look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do another nail so you guys can watch. Clean my brush. So I'm pushing down. Don't push down too hard. You don't want to pull your bristles out. Clean. Good. Okay. So I've got my nail in. I have my polymer powder. And I'm going to get my first bead. Okay. So all you're going to do is pat from side to side. Using the belly of the brush. And keeping your sidewalls nice and tight. Okay? First bead. So you basically got a ball or a bead this size. Okay? Now I'm going to clean my brush. Add a little more monomer liquid. Okay. Second bead. Now I'm going to place this bead on the seam. So right where I ended with the other one. And I'm going to use the belly of my brush and then pull down. Don't pull down too hard. I'm doing this very lightly, just barely stroking, because this is, remember, the highest part of the nail. Okay, you don't want to stroke too much and you don't want to use too much pressure. Okay. Now we are pretending that the cuticle line is up here, okay? So our cuticle bead has to melt into the cuticle area really nice. It has to be firm enough that the monomer doesn't bleed into the cuticle line, but it has to be soft enough that the line is soft and it doesn't look like a raised crust, okay? Clean your brush. Get your bead. And now we're going to work on that cuticle line. Bring it over and down, over and down, and just guide the product over to the sidewall. Okay, so you have that nice C. The free edge is nice and thin. The sidewalls and cuticle are nice and thin, but you've got that nice C curve. Now, if you've done your nail and you find that the free edge is a little thin and you want to add some more product, then go back and just add a little bead and feather it back. Grab a smaller bead, okay, and I can apply it to my free edge. Okay, and then just feather it to blend it. Okay, done. So I want you completing 10 of those. I want you completing 10 of them on every different size of nail, okay? So from 0 to 10. So you have all your tips. The 0, 1, 2, 3 is the larger nails. And then 7, 8, 9, 10 are the smaller nails. So I want you practicing on small nails and big nails, not just the big ones, okay? So your goal for next week is to have 10 little beads, either on tin foil or paper towel, and 10 tips that look exactly like this. Now, before we go, I'm going to quickly show you how to rebalance these tips, okay? Once these tips harden, they need to be rebalanced. Even if you think your nail is perfect and it doesn't need any filing or buffing, it does. Even the most perfect nail needs filing and buffing. So I'm gonna file and buff my nail. Then you can put a top coat on and then leave it, okay? So we'll do that right now. So this one I've already done, so grab this one. So when you're filing, hold your nail. It's probably easier if you take it out of your finger and hold your nail. And you're going to hold your file on the end like this. And you're going to go back and forth like this. So I know that my nail is not even if I can see little divots, little shiny divots. I need to file the nail down enough that I can't see any of those shiny little divots anymore, okay? I can hold my file like this as well, and I can file like that. I can hold it like this and file the other side. Taper the free edge. Make sure the free edge is nice and thin. Taper the sidewalls. Make sure your cuticle line is nice and thin. Look at the nail straight on and make sure that this C curve is perfectly even. So if you're looking straight on to your C curve, you want that to look perfectly even. You don't want it to be thick over here and thin over there, or thick in the middle and cut off on a sharp angle over here. Everything perfect. When you look at it from this angle, you want it to be perfect like this. Thin around the cuticle, thin on the free edge, with a nice C, rounded C in the middle, okay? When you're happy with the shape, you can buff. Now ladies, there is a lot of nail dust when you're filing and buffing. So if you have a mask, a face mask, then you should be wearing it. The face mask will protect against the dust. It won't help with the fumes or the smell because those are vapors, but it will protect from the dust. You don't really want to inhale all of that artificial dust. It is a toxin and it can lodge into your lungs and cause issues later down the road. So just protect yourself when you're filing and buffing and wear your face mask. Beveling the edge. Okay. Now you're going to get your duster brush. Dust it really good. Get all the dust off. Now I have a Harmony dual coat. It's basically like a top coat for artificial nails. You guys can use any kind of top coat. I don't want you to waste your gel top coat on your acrylic nails. If you're just practicing, I don't want you using your gel top coat. Save that for when you're actually working on human hands. So just your regular top coat or acrylic top coat will do. I'm using the dual coat from Harmony. It doesn't need light. It's not light curing. It's just a regular top coat. Cap the free edge, and you're done. So I want you to have 10 of these complete for next week, okay? And I want you to start off, make sure that you've got your 10 beads. When you're confident with your beads, then move on to your nails, okay? Perfect. Okay guys, any more questions? Is everybody good with their product and their brush? Everyone has all the supplies that they need? When you're done, make sure that there's no acrylic stuck in your bristles. Push off. Make sure your brush is clean. Now, If your brush came in a plastic tube, do not put your brush back in that plastic tube. Okay, remember we were talking about the fumes from harsh chemicals, including monomer liquid. If you put the plastic tube over this, the fumes are going to melt that plastic tube onto your bristles and completely destroy your brush. So all I'm going to do is use monomer liquid. Make sure all my bristles are nice and tight and smooth. And I'm going to leave this monomer liquid in my brush. So you can have a little tray like this, and you can store all of your supplies on it. So next week when you come back to it, you have it all ready. If you want, you can get a paper towel and you can wrap your brush in it. It's nice if you had a little container or something that you could actually close and seal that has a lid. But the monomer liquid does have a strong smell. So make sure you're not using the monomer liquid in the kitchen or in an area that you're eating or drinking or making meals, okay? Just gonna leave my brush like that. And it'll be ready for me the next time. And remember, pay special attention to your bristles. If there's any little bits of acrylic that harden in your bristles, you won't be able to get them out and you're gonna have to get another brush, okay? So be very careful with your brushes. And wait another minute or two for questions. And remember guys, I wanna follow up with everyone tomorrow during our Zoom call. So the spa and the nails will be separated. Anna's gonna send you guys the link with the time for our Zoom. And we can troubleshoot with questions that you have about what we did today. And we can go over that tomorrow, so. No questions? Okay, guys. I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun. Acrylic nails are so fun. This is a really awesome section, so there's lots of art and lots of techniques that we'll be covering. You're good? Awesome. Okay guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Have fun.